The Juvenile Law Center's Leadership Prize is awarded to outstanding advocates working to advance the rights and well-being of youth in the child welfare and juvenile justice systems.
Juvenile Law Center has been richly recognized and awarded for its accomplishments and its leadership over the past 40 years. Just as these efforts to advance the field will continue, though, the innovations should continue to be recognized and noted and celebrated. As a result, it gives me great pleasure to be able to announce tonight the establishment of the Juvenile Law Center Leadership Prize.
Every prize needs an inaugural winner. And so the inaugural winner of the Juvenile Law Center Leadership Prize for 2015 is Bob Schwartz.
I mentioned my admiration for Christopher Wren, the architect, because St. Paul's Cathedral is one of my favorite buildings in the world. And there was a story that ran during the course of the building of the cathedral, came upon one of the craftsmen and said, "What do you do, sir?" And he said, "I'm a stonemason, Mr. Wren." And the architect went on and asked the next guy he saw, who was also a stonemason, "What do you do?" And he said, "Sir, I am building a cathedral." So many of us in our profession are asked, what do we do? And we say, "Oh, we're lawyers for children." But that's not really the story. We're building a better world for them. You and me, the folks at Juvenile Law Center, all of our colleagues, our partners, our funders, that's what we're building together.
All of you are part of this movement. We all care about children. We all care about young people, and that we know that we could do so much harm, and we have done so much harm by incarcerating our young people.
I'm happy to say that we've been able to make significant changes in international standards on child soldiers, on child domestic workers, and on children working with mercury and gold mines.
And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you to ensure every child the prize of a loving, safe, permanent family.
We're all getting started. I stand on the shoulders of giants, and there are many, but I also know many people like me that are young and up and coming that are going to do much greater things, and I'm proud, and I'm humbled, and I'm honored, and I'm grateful.
I believe that Americans should be informed that our vision of justice is skewed, manipulated by racism, classism, and stubbornness that keeps outdated policy in place.
Juvenile Law Center, thank you so much for everything that you stand for. I appreciate you.
I also want to thank my family, Stoneleaf Foundation, who helped me when I did finish the Human Rights Watch report, which was amazing, based on 500 interviews of children that were raised on registries.
Our strongest messengers are people who are formerly incarcerated men and women and victims of violent crime.
We all have the obligation to stop, to listen, and to elevate and lift up our young people, and to celebrate their hope and their vision, and to let them lead us to a better world for every single young person who's in foster care. We can get there. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to our 2020 Juvenile Law Center Leadership Prize celebration. It's wonderful to be with all of you tonight, and I'm already feeling so inspired having just watched with you some clips from our past winners. We're really hoping that tonight can be a night when we come together to celebrate the work of Juvenile Law Center and the inspiring, amazing careers of our 3 2020 Leadership Prize winners, Sherry Lockman, Stephen Harper, and Shannan Wilber. Congratulations to my 3 colleagues. We are so privileged to honor you tonight. These are very challenging times for each of us, for our cities, our states, and certainly for our country. The combination of the COVID-19 pandemic and the racial reckoning in our streets has really brought our work to a different level of urgency, but also to a different level of awareness. There's more conversation about our justice system, and we're trying to expand that lens to include our juvenile justice system as well as our child welfare system, and really focus on the structural racism on the basis of each of those systems and what we can do now to make a difference, a transformative difference. We had planned an amazing event. Back in May, we were going to be celebrating both our 45th anniversary as well as the 5th Leadership Prize with our 2020 celebration originally scheduled for May 14th. You're going to be hearing about some upcoming lunchtime 45-minute conversations and other events to celebrate our 45th anniversary. But tonight we're going to be celebrating our 2020 Leadership Prize, our 5th annual Leadership Prize, by recognizing Sherry, Stephen, and Shannon. We want to give sincere thanks to all of you for joining us. We know that we are all Zoom weary, but we also know that it's important to come together and share positive energy and positive reflection, and we hope that's what we can do tonight. A warm and grateful thank you to all of our sponsors, and an invitation to each of you to help us raise an additional $25,000 tonight. All you have to do is text to 2020 prize 44321 at various times. It'll be scrolling at the bottom of your screen, and help us reach that $25,000 goal. Everything you raise will be matched dollar for dollar. So sit back, take a break, enjoy this evening, feel inspired, and then continue to work with us in the coming year. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care and stay well. I'm going to turn it over next to our chair of our board, Stephen Lobaton, to offer his words of welcome. Stephen?
Thank you so much for that, Sue. You know, on behalf of the board, I want to welcome you as well to tonight's celebration of Stephen, Sherry, and Shannon for the extraordinary work that they have done. You know, even in ordinary times, serving and supporting and advancing the most vulnerable juveniles in America is a difficult undertaking. Over the last year, it's been an extraordinary undertaking. And I'm very proud of the work of the organization and of the leaders who have moved forward on these efforts. Those efforts would be impossible without the support of the people who are here with us tonight. So just reaffirming what Sue had said, and on behalf of the board, thank you for all you do.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Leadership Prize virtual event. My name is Daniel Okonkwo, and I had the honor to serve as the chair of this year's Leadership Prize Selection Committee. I'm also an incoming board member at Juvenile Law Center, and in my day job, I work at JPMorgan Chase in our Office of Nonprofit Engagement. I'm so excited that we're able to gather here tonight from our homes, our living rooms, our dining rooms. And if you're like me and perhaps sometimes need to get away from boisterous children, perhaps you're tuned in from the front seat of your car or maybe even your backyard. Tonight, we honor 3 outstanding advocates for the rights and well-being of young people. First, however, I'd like to thank my colleagues on the 2020 Leadership Prize Selection Committee. Nicole Pittman, Jasmine Moore, Emily Buss, Brandon Buskey, and Kate Burdick. Your insights, your preparation, and your experiences made this year's selection process fair, efficient, but most of all, incredibly enjoyable. While we had a slate of amazing nominees, it was clear that these 3 advocates deserved this year's Leadership Prize. We all know that the systems that Juvenile Law Center works to change are fraught with systemic racism, and they don't provide the care, the compassion, the justice, nor the love that our young people deserve. This year's Leadership Prize winners are working to change that. These 3 advocates, Shannan Wilber, Sherry Lockman, and Stephen Harper, who I have to give a Special shout out too, because my first job out of law school was in the Miami-Dade Public Defender's Office. These three advocates share Juvenile Law Center's commitment to justice and to infusing the child welfare system, the justice system, and the foster care system with the love that our young people deserve. Thank you again to this year's Leadership Prize winners for the work you do. Thank you to Juvenile Law Center for recognizing the work that advocates do day in and day out on behalf of young people. And thank you all who are tuning in tonight. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Good evening. I'm Kalia Ali Wertheimer, Chair of the 2020 Leadership Host Committee and a newly appointed board member to the Juvenile Law Center. I want to join Sue, Stephen, and Daniel in welcoming you to our 2020 Leadership Celebration. I was excited to help the 2020 Leadership Prize event this year, but sad to not meet our winners. I found the Juvenile Law Center through my son Jacob, who is very interested in all issues surrounding mass incarceration, and I, like many Americans, had no idea of what our precious children are fighting against in our very own judicial system. It is with great pleasure that I take my legacy with my father, Boxer Muhammad Ali, and work in concert with the Juvenile Law Center to educate, spread the word, and continue to fight against the horrible atrocities that are happening to our children at this very moment. I come to the Juvenile Law Center as a mother. I come to the Juvenile Law Center as an African American woman who knows all too well how difficult it is in this country for our Black and brown Americans. I'm so incredibly sad that I won't get to meet my fellow host committee members and all of our wonderful supporters in person tonight. However, the important thing is we're all here in spirit, and the effort and the soul that embodies the Juvenile Law Center remains ever present, alive, and as strong as it ever was, still fighting on behalf of the rights of children everywhere.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Fireman, Senior Managing Director at Juvenile Law Center. It is an honor and a real joy to be presenting this award to Sherry Lockman. I first met Sherry when she was a Zurau Fellow at Juvenile Law Center, and from the get-go, Sherry had a passion and a commitment not only to the work in front of her, but to a long-term vision of transforming the child welfare system. As an example, one day Sherry came into my office and said, "I have an idea for how we can improve education outcomes for children in care. I'll just go get a job in the federal government and we'll have an inside-outside strategy." Well, sooner than I would have guessed it, Sherry was working in the Senate and in the Obama administration, and sure enough, we had policy reforms to support better school success for children in care. Anne Marie Ambrose, the managing director at Casey Family Programs and a dear friend of Juvenile Law Centers, put it this way: Sherry is an example of how a vision can transform a system to fundamentally change our assumptions about what is possible. Rafael Lopez, the former commissioner of the Administration on Children, Youth, and Families, said this about Sherry: "Her unrivaled and relentless commitment to justice drives her work forward." As founder and director of Foster America, Sherry has created a fellowship program that infuses the child welfare system with the interdisciplinary, fresh, new ideas that it needs to ensure that every child has a safe and loving home. Sherry, congratulations. Thank you so much for your work, for your leadership, and for your vision of what is possible.
Thank you, Jessica. I will always be grateful for your incredible mentorship when I was a young attorney at JLC. It just shaped everything I've done in my career since then. Over the past 14 years, I've worked to improve government systems for vulnerable children and families. This work is deeply personal because I know what it's like to be a tiny, powerless child on the other end of a giant, dysfunctional government system. I remember entering foster care in Brooklyn, New York, shortly after I turned 6. I remember being passed among multiple foster families, caseworkers, and judges. I remember raising red flags along the way and being completely ignored. And I remember feeling worthless and discarded like a piece of trash. In 4th grade, I was lucky to have an English teacher, Ms. Owen, who completely changed my life. She convinced me that I could someday use my trauma to create change for other vulnerable children. I went from feeling like a powerless victim to feeling empowered to use my experiences to make a difference for other kids. Her words are why I studied hard in school and obtained college and graduate degrees so that my voice would finally be heard in a society that too often is only able to hear voices from places of privilege. After too many years of school, I was finally ready to make good on my pent-up childhood dreams. And JLC gave me my shot. I joined JLC as a Zubrow Fellow, a 2-year fellowship in children's law for freshly minted lawyers. While I was full of passion when I started at JLC, I was clueless about what to do with it. JLC helped me direct my passion and taught me how to be an effective advocate. They taught me the importance of centering the voices of children and families in our work. They sent me out to volunteer with state and local groups of older foster youth advocating for child welfare reform so that I could then return to the office and weave their voices and their insights into our legal briefs and policy proposals. They taught me how much change you can accomplish in this world simply by giving away the credit. I remember toiling away with my colleagues after hours at JLC on child welfare and juvenile justice, policy proposals, and talking points to back up those proposals. And I remember learning how to freely give away these proposals and talking points to public officials, because that's what it takes to get change enacted into law. So for every headline you see JLC making in the news on their latest Supreme Court argument or class action, please know that they are accomplishing so much more behind the scenes that you will never hear about. Finally, JLC taught me that systems reform is a team sport. My JLC colleagues and I work just as closely with our partners at the ABA, Children's Defense Fund, and Education Law Center as we did with each other. So when you watch JLC's work up close, the line blurs between where JLC ends and where its partner organizations begin. I took these lessons from the Juvenile Law Center with me after I left JLC to join the federal government, first as a Senate staffer and later as a policy advisor in the Obama administration. Understanding that systems change is a team sport, I continue to collaborate with JLC and its partners in these new roles. For example, JLC, its partners, and I work together to help Senator Franken craft and pass a new law that improves the education of foster youth. After leaving the federal government, I started a child welfare reform organization called Foster America. Foster America is my way of paying the Zubrow Fellowship forward. Like the Zubrow Fellowship, we are working to help build the next generation of leaders for our field. While the Zubrow Fellowship focuses on cultivating new legal talent, we focus on attracting other types of professionals to our field with skills that are just as critical for creating change. Specifically, we recruit diverse and talented professionals for our fellowship with skills in technology, data, human-centered design, strategy, and finance. Skills that are needed to help our country address its most persistent child welfare challenges in new ways. We place our fellows in leadership roles for 18 months in child welfare and related government agencies across the country. Half of our fellows work on reforms designed to strengthen families and prevent children from entering foster care, while the other half work on reforms designed to improve foster care. In the long term, we aim to scale the innovations our fellows develop and build a pipeline of new leaders for our field by helping our alumni move on to higher levels of child welfare leadership. It's ambitious, but thanks to our amazing partners at government agencies and organizations like Casey, Annie Casey, and CSSP, our co-founder Marie Zumler-Wu, and our talented team, our board chair Rafael Lopez, and our incredible board, and our funders, we were able to place nearly 50 fellows across 14 states, DC, and Puerto Rico in under 4 years. And we're about to launch a new set of fellowships. Our fellows are joining our field at a time when there is an unprecedented opportunity to change our country's approach to child welfare, to create one that is far more prevention-oriented, racially just, and centered on the needs of children and families. Our country's growing movement for racial justice has increased the momentum in our field to advance reforms that support families and prevent unnecessary family separation, particularly among Black, Native American, and families of color who are vastly and unjustly overrepresented in our child welfare system. At the same time, COVID has raised a sense of urgency to double down on prevention efforts to help the increasing number of vulnerable families in our country before they reach a point of crisis. The work ahead will not be easy, so it's inspiring to see just how many talented professionals want to join our fellowship at this time. They are filled with passion, just as I was when I joined JLC. But they will need all of our help, just as I did, to harness their passion and point it in the right direction. Before wrapping up, I'd like to take a moment to thank JLC and the Zubrau family for giving me my shop, and my incredible mentors and collaborators at the center, past and present. Specifically, I'd like to thank Jessica and Jenny, Bob, Marsha and Susan, Ria, Neha and Emily, Rosie, Lourdes, Laval, Mia, Joanne, Joanna, Jeff, and Debbie. Thank you all so much. And thanks to everyone listening in the children's rights community for allowing me to be part of your team.
Congratulations, Sherry. We're all so proud of you here at Foster America and just so very grateful for all of the wonderful work that you do every day.
Congratulations, Sherry. I'm so happy for you. This award is so well deserved, and it is truly an honor to work alongside you and learn from you every day to improve the lives of children and youth. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Sherry. So in awe of your vision always, and so lucky to be on this journey with you.
Sherry, I just wanted to add my congratulations to you for receiving the Juvenile Law Center's Leadership Prize, and to say how proud I am of you for the work that you and your amazing team have done to make Foster America so impactful in child welfare in such a short period of time. Congratulations and love you.
Good evening and welcome. I'm MARSHA LEVICK, co-founder and chief legal officer at Juvenile Law Center. Kids are different, right? Seems like a pretty obvious proposition. But up until 2005, those obvious developmental differences between kids and adults did not prevent 16 and 17-year-olds from being executed in the United States. That changed, of course, with the United States Supreme Court's decision in Roper v. Simmons, when the court categorically barred the death penalty for all children under the age of 18 as a prohibited cruel and unusual punishment under the Eighth Amendment. Which brings me to our 2020 Juvenile Law Center Leadership Prize awardee, Stephen Harper. I was not in the room where it happened, but in 2000, as the effects of the super predator myth were bearing down on America's teenagers, Harper decided it was time to take on the juvenile death penalty. As the leader of the newly formed Juvenile Death Penalty Initiative, Harper immersed himself in the emerging developmental science, merged that into his brilliance as a fighter and a lawyer for children, and saw the path to mounting a new challenge to the death penalty for kids, even where such challenges for adults had consistently failed. The initiative ultimately grew to include a large coalition of organizations, but as Steve Drizin, one of Harper's nominators, wrote, there was only one unquestionable leader, Steve Harper. As Drizin further noted, Steve Harper orchestrated both the legal and media strategies with stunning success and set the platform for the subsequent victorious challenges to other extreme sentencing practices for youth. My first opportunity to work closely with Harper was as part of the group of advocates who came together once the Supreme Court granted cert in Roper. I co-authored with Steve Drizin the lead advocate's amicus brief before the court. Characteristically, Steve did not participate in the writing of the brief, but as Dr. David Fassler, another one of Steve Harper's nominators, wrote, Steve served as a vital link between the medical, scientific, and legal communities organizing the preparation of 16 separate amicus briefs submitted to the Supreme Court in Roper, and Dr. Fassler properly credited those efforts with playing a significant role in the court's landmark ruling. In a column about Ruth Bader Ginsburg this past weekend, former New York Times Supreme Court reporter Linda Greenhouse observed that what set Justice Ginsburg apart wasn't just how smart she was, but also her imagination, her ability to see that the law could be harnessed in service to fundamental transformation. The same can be said of Steve Harper. He was, as Steve Drizin also wrote, the man behind the curtain, always guiding, instructing, and inspiring. He was and remains a brilliant strategist, a passionate and compassionate advocate, a mentor and advisor to all of us working to save children from our country's harshest penalties. As we celebrate the 15th anniversary of Roper, how fitting that we also celebrate the person who did so much to bring it to fruition. He has lived his professional life fighting for the rights of the condemned and the discarded. And although he recently retired from his most recent position, running a sentencing clinic at FIU Law School, he remains my Eighth Amendment whisperer, making sure we all keep our eyes on the prize. With gratitude for your friendship, your wisdom, and your counsel, and with a huge virtual hug, it is my pleasure and my honor to present you, Steve Harper, with Juvenile Law Center's 2020 Leadership Prize. You are indeed a guiding light who has lit the way for so many of us. Thank you.
I am humbled and I'm honored to receive this award from the Juvenile Law Center. The Juvenile Law Center is one of the most effective and long-standing organizations advocating on behalf of kids. MARSHA LEVICK, who just gave me this award, is a great, ferocious, and fearless lawyer. She is prolific in her work, and she just recently, as we speak, filed yet another amicus brief in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And there's also, I want to thank Bob Schwartz. Bob and I go way back to college. He was the legal advisor for people considering going to law school. He lied and got me into law school. And other than his pathological support of the Philadelphia Phillies, Bob is a kind, wonderful, and great man. I'm sure the reason why I'm here is because of the work that I did in Roper versus Simmons, which dealt with the culpability of kids. And let me just tell you some of the things that I'm proudest of. The first thing is that the Juvenile Death Penalty Initiative was the first organization, as far as I know, to talk about the brain and the effects of brain on culpability. Nowadays, the brain science permeates the criminal justice system as a whole. And I'm proud of the fact that I think the Juvenile Death Penalty Initiative was the first organization that introduced that. Secondly, I think that we contributed to the idea that science is critical in legal decisions dealing with culpability. We made the courts aware of the fact that you don't just use forensic psychiatrists or psychologists. You have to consult with the world of the psychiatrists and psychologists who know how these things affect kids and adults. The third thing I think is that obviously we created juvenile jurisprudence. Out of Roper versus Simmons came cases like Graham, like Miller, and like Montgomery, another case that MARSHA wrote the substantive brief on. And there's now a whole separate juvenile jurisprudence. And finally, the thing I guess I'm proudest of is that the juvenile death penalty was eliminated by juvenile lawyers. We were very conscientious. There was no conflict between us. Our theory was that we had to emphasize that kids are different as opposed to it was a death penalty case. And finally, I just want to honor the people that worked on the Juvenile Death Penalty Initiative. First, there's Victor Stribe, who for many, many years worked alone to end the juvenile death penalty. Then there's Steve Drizin, who's my compadre. I never ceased to be awestruck rather by his incredible work. There's Bernadine Dord, Ann James, Elizabeth Gladden-Keough, Laura Adams, Adam Ortiz, Laura Burstein, and Sadie Rosenthal. All these people worked on the Juvenile Death Penalty Initiative. From our allies in the psychological world, there's Larry Steinberg, who's the leading psychologist. And the leading psychiatrist is David Fassler. David testified in front of state legislatures. He spoke to as many groups as possible. And ultimately, he got the American Psychiatric Association and the American Medical Association to come up with policies opposing the juvenile death penalty. And they joined in an amicus brief presented in Roper versus Simmons. We wouldn't be here without David Fassler. And finally, there's Patty Puritz. She was the head of the Juvenile Center at the American Bar Association, and she was the thinker and the initiator and the completer of the Juvenile Death Penalty Initiative. We wouldn't be here without Patty Puritz. And then finally, there's my family. There's my wife, who is also the love of my life, and my kids, who put up with my obsession for probably far too long. So on behalf of everyone who worked on the juvenile death penalty, proving that good people can sometimes do great things, I accept this award. And thank you.
Harp, I honor and respect you to the moon and back. Sure wish I could give you a big hug. Thank you for everything, and wish you all the best and sending so much love. Bye.
Hello, my name is James Bell, and I'm the founding president of the W. Hayward Burns Institute and a member of the board of directors for the Juvenile Law Center. It is my pleasure to introduce Shannan Wilber for this year's Leadership Prize and congratulate all the other recipients. All recipients of this prestigious award have demonstrated extraordinary works on behalf of children, and their resumes reflect leadership and accomplishment. But I would like to talk about why I have such admiration for Shannan since the day we met. Shannan has the values and inner voice that allows her to hear beyond the narrative. Nicole Hannah-Jones of the 1619 Project said that if we are truly at the precipice of a transformative moment, the most tragic of outcomes would be that the demand be too timid and the resolution too small. Shannan has always had the values that never settles for resolutions that are too small. She knows that the decisions made in the rooms where power is exercised are hollow if they are not made in the interest of those impacted in the room. I watched and learned from her as she brought the clarity of vision about why it matters to name pronouns when identifying yourself. And I also watched other people roll their eyes when she took that position. She has partnered with and listened to others about how to oppose oppressive structures with unity rather than division. I love that Shannan doesn't need to win the argument, but keeps us moving in the right direction. It is these leadership qualities that are not taught, but are embedded in who she is. The great poet Adrienne Rich wrote, "I long to create something that cannot be used to keep us passive." So I invite you to acknowledge Shannan at this moment as the personification of those words and welcome her to receive this Leadership Prize.
Thank you to my friends at Juvenile Law Center for this beautiful award and recognition. It's especially significant to be acknowledged by colleagues whose work has been so pivotal to virtually every significant legal victory for young people in child welfare and juvenile justice systems across the country. James, thank you for all the lovely things I hope you just said about me. And congratulations to Sherry and Stephen, with whom I share the honor of this year's Leadership Award. Tonight, I want to celebrate and acknowledge all the advocates who fight for justice and get in good trouble every day for the young people we represent. Despite the perilous state of the world, I feel a great deal of hope and gratitude. I'm especially grateful to have the privilege of work that I love and that feeds me. Like many child advocates, I started out representing individual children whose faces I can still see in my mind's eye. Their stories continue to inspire me to speak up and fight back against injustice. I will never forget the first child I represented in a dependency case. I'll call her Elena. I had just started my job as the sole employee of a new organization called Legal Advocates for Children and Youth. I got a call from the local protection and advocacy organization about a 9-year-old girl who had run away from the children's shelter. She had been involuntarily hospitalized because she was, quote, hysterical and inconsolable, and therefore a danger to herself. The P&A folks were particularly concerned because the hospital had placed her in physical restraints. I called Elena's appointed counsel, dependency counsel, who told me that the child had been removed from her monolingual undocumented grandparents based on a report of sexual abuse by her uncle. The attorney admitted that neither she nor the social worker had met the child yet. The social worker was on vacation, and the attorney planned to talk with Elena at the detention hearing scheduled in 10 days. That's how I learned that Elena had no idea why she was separated from her family, nor whether or when she would ever see them again. She'd been in the shelter for over a week. I was so mad that I immediately lost my fear of making a mistake as a new lawyer who had no clue what I was doing. I called the hospital and told them a white lie that I was Elena's attorney, and I arranged to visit. I went to the hospital and met with Elena, who was happy to have a visitor and agreed that I could help her. And she printed her name in big block letters across the bottom of a retainer agreement, which I still have. And then I went back to my office and wrote a motion to recuse appointed counsel for cause. I called the court clerk and set an emergency hearing that same week. The court granted my motion, making me extremely unpopular with appointed counsel in her office. Fast forward, Elena was released from the hospital and returned to her family when they agreed to a safety plan and services. The last time I saw Elena, I asked her if she needed anything else. She flashed a big smile and she said, "A mini skirt." When I hesitated for a moment, she said, "Okay, a cherry Coke." I learned many critical lessons in my first case. Children and families suffer great harm in systems that value convenience over compassion. One person paying attention can disrupt giant bureaucracies. When you don't know what to do, make up a motion and set it for emergency hearing. And when you visit your 9-year-old client in the hospital, bring a cherry Coke.
Shannon, on behalf of everyone in NCLR, I want to congratulate you on this momentous leadership award. When you began this work, it was before a time when there were policies in place to protect LGBTQ people. And when I think of the work that you do, the work that you lead now, to protect the most underrepresented in our community, I'm in awe of you, Shannon. Congratulations. NCLR is so proud to be on your team.
To our very own RBG of Youth Justice, we are so proud of you.
From your original pod, before pods were even a thing.
You go, girl. We love you.
Shannon, I've known you as a mentor, a colleague, an inspiration, and a dear friend for almost 30 years now. And I am truly delighted to have this opportunity to congratulate you on a lifetime of achievement and accomplishment, working on some of the most challenging and important issues of our time. Congratulations, friend, and happy birthday.
Hi, Shannon. Congratulations on the Leadership Prize, and happy birthday.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed the warm remarks by this year's winners and their beautiful introductions as much as I did, and feel inspired and energized to continue to work with us in the coming year. Thank you to all of you who donated tonight. You can donate anytime at jlc.org, where you can also follow all of our most recent work and communications. Please do follow our communications. We'll be rolling out all the information to celebrate our 45th anniversary year with you in the coming weeks. So I hope to participate with many of you in those events. Please stay well, take good care, and I look very forward to when we can all be together and gather in person and celebrate. My best to you all. Thank you.